Welcome to the Football Show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Ruff, Neil Murray and Tam Cowan here with me in the studio. Thank you to you for joining us ever on this Tuesday. We're going to be talking about football, looking ahead to the weekend. Of course, the first Premiership matches after the split. There's also some tidy games to talk about in the Championship as well. And we'll look back over the Scottish Cup semi-finals at the weekend, where Inverness and Celtic booked their place in the final on June 3rd. And as I look at everybody thinking to themselves, well, Scottish Cup final, Ruffy, something to look forward to, and it's a 12:15 kick-off, and I cannot believe it.
No, certainly we'll be looking forward to it at 12 o'clock, but I think the people for Inverness will not be looking forward to it, because on the scale of things you want to get there a bit early. So you're talking about, if you're in Inverness, you're talking about setting off about what, 7 o'clock in the morning?
Aye.
You know, to get there for 10, you know, and then you're getting into the stadium and sampling the atmosphere. So it's an early start.
And the bottom line is as well, and then, you know, the one and only time that Motherwell won it, which turned out to be a great day out. Don't just think about the game itself, but we were on to Glasgow for basically the pubs opening at 11. We were into Central Station. You had a wee few bevies run about there, and then with stacks of time still to soak up the atmosphere at Hampden, you jumped in a train, you jumped in taxis, whatever, loads of Motherwell fans going for the city centre down to Hampden, and that was all part of your day. And I'll tell you the other thing as well, in Inverness, you know, are unquestionably in the same boat as we've been in those occasions. And the two finals that we got to under Stevie Robinson in more recent times, we knew that Motherwell had little chance in those, and particularly in the Scottish Cup final, so it proved. So actually, the fun part of the day, having a laugh with your pals, having a couple of drinks, drowning your sorrows after it, drowning your sorrows before it if you thought you didn't have a chance, that's all part of the day and part of the match day experience. This stinks, doesn't it, man?
Absolutely. I mean, I think at this moment, the story's just leaked out. Whether it's one of those stories that just leaks out to test the water and see how far the anger's going to kick in. I mean, the English FA Cup final over the last few years has been a 5:15 kick-off. They've had the evening one. The suggestion is it could be 12:15 or 12 noon for the Scottish Cup final to kick off, because I think the English Cup final is going to go to 3 o'clock, that traditional kick-off, which I remember from the 70s. That's exactly when I remember.
Traditional, but Peter, again, we mentioned it just before we came on air. It was also traditional. The Scottish Cup was 3 o'clock. The two games effectively went head to head.
Yeah.
And with the best will in the world, I can only speak for us here. Nothing would have been may even have featured, of course, but we were only, you watched the Scottish game and then you'd get the highlights of the English game at night, you know, and it might even have been the day that, was it Gaza broke his leg, or he broke somebody's leg in 91, when that was that's all I can recall for that. The highlights at night for the FA Cup, I think it was Spurs Notts Forest maybe, that was enough, that was all you needed to see at night. And that's just as, and before you go to the boys, for clarity, I take it the FA Cup final, is that Sky that have got that, or is it Sky and BBC? Sky and the BBC. So Viaplay and the BBC have got the Scottish Cup final.
Yeah.
So clearly Viaplay, for financial reasons, they're thinking that if we go head to head with Sky, that might dilute some of the revenue they can get via advertising, because it's no the only show in town. You've suddenly get the two big games if they did go head to head, and football is dominated with cash a lot more than it was previously when the two games went head to head. So we know why they've done it, but I think it's time for a bit of fan power. I think the Celtic fans should take the lead.
Yeah.
So we're not having it.
Well, I think the obvious thing here is that the noses out of joint mostly are the Inverness fans, Neil, because they'll be looking and thinking to themselves, that's a hell of a journey to make. And I thought it was unfair to them even in the semi-final against Falkirk.
Yeah, it's almost forcing them to come down the Friday night and stay over if they can somewhere, you know, to get the most of the experiences, as Tam said. You know, it's penalising a club that doesn't every year get into the final. As Tam said, it's an occasion, it's an atmosphere, and you're detracting from a lot of fans day out.
And you know what, Neil, no harm whatsoever to Inverness, Caledonia and Thistle, but wait to see the odds in the final when they come out. The day out part of it might be the main part of the day for Inverness. You know, it would take a hell of a shock, way beyond the Super Cali Go Ballistic days, for Inverness to beat this Celtic team in this occasion. So the whole day out the trip down to Glasgow early morning, the cars, the buses, the trains, cutlers in the pubs, city centre, maybe time for a last pint near Hampden, into the game, savour it all. That's just completely blown out the water, and it absolutely stinks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll wait to see what fallout comes from that, but nevertheless, that's what they're talking about at the moment, a lunchtime kick-off to avoid that clash with the English Cup final, which I think is going back to 3 o'clock, but that story will develop. You can give us your thoughts on that as well. Thank you so much to everybody as we look at our figures for the last month. So many of you have been consuming all of our unique video content. We're absolutely delighted at the support you've shown us. Thank you very much, not only for the football show, but for all the content. Of course, the one-to-ones, Alex McLeish, John McMaster, David Martindale, and of course Neil Lennon. All of these features have been getting huge views and right across our social media. Thank you to you all for showing your support. We really do appreciate it. If you get a chance, hit the subscribe button, and there's lots more to come, especially over the next few days. We've got a special one-to-one coming up as well that I think you'll enjoy.
It's all about scheduling, though, before you talk about Viaplay and the SFA. If you weren't head-to-head with Tipping Point,
yes,
with Ben Shepherd.
Very good.
I think, I mean, particularly the last quarter an hour of this, and Tipping Point,
Yeah.
when it gets into the final, it's edge of the seat stuff.
Well, there's that, the chase. What's the other one? Pointless.
Eggheads.
Eggheads. Oh, God, now you're going back. And of course, Ruffy's favourite, Blankety Blank. Have you been on Eggheads?
Yeah, been on Eggheads.
Yeah?
Professional footballers versus the Egghead.
Did you win?
No.
No.
You and your rhetorical questions. Did you win? I remember that. Who was it else you were on? That was years ago.
It was Worthington,
Frank Worthington.
Alan Kennedy, myself, Tony Curry, and somebody else.
Wow.
And they all what happens is you all get a subject to pick.
Aye.
And I was last choice.
Right, so what was yours?
Frank Worthington insisted he took music. So same time he was a big Elvis, so he insisted that. Alan Kennedy took sport.
Right.
And Curry took something else. What do you think I get left with?
History.
Aye,
Physics.
What? Physics?
Physics.
No wonder you lost.
Yeah.
And who did you go head-to-head with?
I can't remember. The guy in the fancy shirt. Him at,
Oh, he's an
fancies
ex-mastermind
himself.
champion.
But to be perfectly
Oh, the young man, the dark skin boy.
What was the difficulty?
CJ.
Had you to spell physics? Was that the
no,
starting point?
I just guessed the first two questions. No, because you get A, B, or C, and I
Right.
guessed. But the second one was a tremendous guess because I had just been up in Forest Mechanics sports dinner.
Right.
So the question I can't remember what the question was, but it was, what kind of mechanics is it? And I just said something and it was right.
Did you say
I said
Forest?
mechanics. It was, so what's something mechanics?
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was. Anyway, I got it right.
Right.
So I only get beat 2-1. You had to be there to see it, it was just...
absolutely.
But
I'd leave that story out the autobiography, by the way.
And can I apologise to everyone?
quantum mechanics.
All right, yeah.
Quantum
You just
mechanics.
forgot about
I
quantum
just
and it was
blurted
right.
it.
Can you hold on a minute?
Yeah.
I'm just apologising to the viewers for the dramatic drop in the figures on the show because you're talking a lot of codswallop. Anyway, we've got lots to talk about, as well as the timing of the Scottish Cup final. Getting to the Scottish Cup final is something that always gets people's back up, especially if there's controversy, poor performances, maybe an upset along the way. Did it pan out the way you thought it was going to pan out, Neil? Because it certainly went according to what we all thought it was going to be. I think you thought maybe a draw in penalties.
Yeah.
But they've got a lot of criticism from a lot of the fans. Rangers fans not happy with some performances in the team, and overall they want big change. I know they said that beforehand, but there's nothing like a defeat against your great rivals to accelerate it.
Yeah, it's a strange situation. The starting lineup, before the game, you're looking at the starting lineup and thinking at least 4 or 5 won't be there next year.
Yeah.
So it's a strange scenario where you're playing players that aren't part of the future. Michael Beale said before the game, and he's said after the game, that Rangers weren't good enough in both boxes. But this isn't new. This was the last game. It was the game before.
Yep.
And I think that's, he knows, he understands what the problems are, he understands what he needs to do. But it's continuing game after game after game, because, okay, some people look at it differently, but Rangers by and large did okay in the game between both boxes. At least they were pretty competitive in the first half. They were aggressive at pressing the ball, they won the ball back. Callum McGregor was getting caught in possession a few times. It was a good contest, but effectively, when you've got crossing opportunities, you put the ball in the box, don't really have any strikers in the box to take advantage of that. And then the other side of the coin, defensive lapses have cost them dear every single game against Celtic.
Yeah. Were you absolutely gobsmacked when you watched the goal unfold?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, you know, the players are waiting for a free kick, or the referee to blow the whistle, which you can say that they're culpable. You know, you play to the whistle, you go and kick a ball at the park, you know, whatever, you defend the goal.
Yeah.
But for me, my opinion, Tavernier at the back post is shocking.
Yeah.
You know, it's absolutely shocking. He's in a good position when the ball breaks free to Maeda. He doesn't even look at him. He doesn't look at Jota. He just goes in at the back post. It's an easy goal. It's just poor defending.
Yeah, and even I mean, I know that there are some aspects of it you say between box to box, but in that particular moment there, you played under Walter Smith. That would not have happened, that switch off. I don't think you guys would have been able to get in at half time if that was Walter Smith as the manager, when everybody switches off. Play to the whistle. Four Rangers players were absolutely static.
Well, I'm going to switch it around another way, I suppose, in that Celtic play to the whistle, and Celtic are alert when it comes to dead balls and the ball being out of play. And the thing I like about Celtic now is they've actually got a real determination not to concede. I mean, you looked at Carter Vickers when he made that almost goal line clearance, he put his body in the line. Starfeld looks leaner, looks fitter, puts his body in the line, balls in the box, winning headers. First headers, they're winning first headers. Alistair Johnston looks a good fullback defensively. You know, Juranovic was good going forward. Johnston looks good defensively. You know, so I think Celtic are taking a pride in not losing goals and being really good defensively. And that's what Rangers used to be good at. And I think of late, they've not been. I mean, when Rangers won the title a couple of years ago, they were pretty mean defensively. But since then, it's not been the same. They don't. It just doesn't feel they've got the same pride and determination to keep a clean sheet.
Yeah, and Callum McGregor has said there's a blueprint to coming out and top in these matches.
Yeah, well that's it. That was a pleasing thing again today in such a, you know, high stakes game, emotion surrounding the game. Both teams desperate to win. You know, there's three principles of our play in the goal. You know, quick restart, then we react quicker to the counter press, and then we got the winger coming in at the back post to get his header. So, you know, really pleasing in the midst of all the chaos that, you know, you managed to stay calm and score a goal that's, you know, a lot like what we've been doing.
I mean, the goals are all similar, Tam, because Lila Bada has managed to ghost in back post and catch out Borna Barisic time and time again, and that one, same again, sleeping.
Well, I think where it looked a wee bit silly, indeed, is the very fact that when Neil's saying about play to the whistle, you're not used to seeing that now, particularly with offsides, because the play should keep going, and eventually the linesman might put the flag up at the end of a phase of play. So that's why that stuck out like a sore thumb. But I think over the piece, I must say, from the neutral's perspective, I thought it was a pretty disappointing game. I think it's summed up by the fact we might have been expecting a more high octane encounter, but I'll remind you that not once did the referee have to consult VAR.
Yeah.
There wasn't a single incident worth bothering about, and I'm always quick to praise the refereeing fraternity, but the only way that, again, and there's been referees, particularly ex-referees, have admitted this to me, but I still hate the way that in a Celtic Rangers game the referees get the pat in the head for keeping a lid on it in the early minutes, because there was some meaty challenges went in, and I dare say that if in the semi-final the previous day, Inverness against Falkirk, if the same challenges had gone in, I think the cards would have been out. But there's this thing about it's Celtic Rangers, let's just, you know, and of course when that's at a domestic level, but the lack of cards in that games means maybe down the line the lack of a suspension for a player.
Yeah.
Whereas players at another club might pick up that same suspension. So,
is there any challenge that you're thinking about that caught your eye?
well, I think there was at least 2, 3. Was there one with Lundstrom early doors, and then one of the Celtic players went really heavy out near the touchline.
Yeah.
But there was a few early, and all I was thinking at the time was, wow, this is going to be tasty. They're really going for it. But I don't think the quality was there. And I'll tell you, maybe to go back to an earlier point about the Scottish Cup going head to head with the FA Cup and why they don't want that for the financiers' point of view. Maybe it's not such a bad idea to put these games head to head so we can get watching games elsewhere and seeing what a bit of quality is really like, because I think Celtic Rangers were showing up there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason why I think it's good to get your take on it as well is sometimes I think Celtic and Rangers fans and and people who live in the Central Belt can get caught up in what an Old Firm game is all about, Ruffy. I mean, the game itself wasn't what you would call, as Tam said, a classic, but it did revert to type. Celtic's still not what people consider, going through the gears and hitting top form, just enough to win the game. And then, as Neil mentioned there, totally ruthless when it comes to the execution of the goal and the attitude to not losing a goal.
Yeah, I think the reason, when we say classic, we look at classics, you want goals in classics, don't you? You want a 3-2 or 4-2 or whatever, that goal-mouth incidents, things that we can talk about. I'm really surprised, Neil touched on it, I'm really surprised nobody made a meal of the foul at the end of the box. Why was that not a foul? Why did the referee not blow for a foul?
All right.
For the goal? It was a foul.
Yeah.
Nobody's asked the question, why did you think that wasn't a foul?
It immediately just put the focus on Rangers and standing watching.
Exactly,
well, can I just say something to you? I think maybe he didn't think it was a foul.
Well, how many of us thought it was a foul?
That's a foul.
Aye, I know. But it would be an
Why did
overly...
you not ask this VAR? Have a look at it.
It would be an overly harsh critic.
No, you're having a look at everything else. I'm surprised nobody said, hey, have a look at that.
Yeah, I think what you're getting involved in with the VAR is clear and obvious error by the referee. So
Even clear and obvious errors.
I thought it was an obvious error.
Yeah, I must admit, I'll hold my hands up. I'll hold my hands up, Ruffy. I looked at it and I thought it was pretty lame, and I just thought, well, it doesn't. At the end of the day, Raskin was closer to the ball than anybody.
Yeah.
So he had the first port of call on that. Then you've got the back line who are closer to the ball than Maeda. And Maeda still has time to run away from them and then quickly take one touch and then second touch, it's across. I looked at it and I said to myself, okay, he's not given a foul, fine, he thinks he's run into him. I didn't think it was any great shakes.
Who's complaining about it? Who's wanting a foul? Who was wanting a foul? The Celtic player on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a foul.
Yeah, well, you think it's a foul. Some people don't. Some people look at it and think, okay, it's not a bugbear. I think
you know what?
The main consternation, Tam, is the actual switch off.
Aye, and if ever there was a game that actually we should take the focus well away from the referee, it was that semi-final tie, because the referee strolled through the game. I thought I'm struggling to think of any controversy whatsoever, and I'm delighted that actually Michael Beale seems to have put certainly with his comments after the game about effectively having the biggest clear out that they've seen in years at Ibrox. He's clearly put the focus on the players, because if it came to marks out of 10, the referee scored a lot higher clearly than anybody like, Morelos, Ryan Kent, guys that were invisible, and you look at, when you talk about a refereeing blunder, what about Fashion Sakala's miss? That was right up there with Chris Ilwalumo's, referees never make blunders on that scale.
Well, we'll talk about that, because Ian says here, VAR doesn't look, and this is the point I'm making, VAR doesn't look at fouls outside the box unless it's a red card. So there's no clear and obvious error for him to intervene on a situation. And of course, offside is a matter of fact, which they do determine. So it's one of those situations where I think Rangers had the upper hand to clear the ball. In fact, I think one of the players was running away the other way up the park, because he thought, well, play on, So at the end of the day, Celtic took full advantage of it. Rangers paid a heavy penalty for it. And now the fallout from that is, of course, Michael Beale's got to somehow galvanise his support and get them buying into what he's going to do as far as his buying plans are in the summer. And Michael Beale, after it, was fairly reflective on the form of this Rangers side.
This one will sting for a few days, but the problems are not today, are they? The problems are throughout the season. It's been a disappointing season from a Rangers fan. From the moment we beat PSV, this season promised a lot more than what it's given. It's the first season in a couple of years where we haven't won a trophy, or we haven't had a big finale to the end of the season. And that's bitterly disappointing me as the manager and everybody that's associated with the club. All we can do is move forward and do better. We need to do better.
Yeah, and the one thing, when I was sitting in the press room listening to the manager, there were 2 or 3 things that irked him. The first one is undoubtedly, Neil, from a Rangers perspective, which is quite simply there are players of quality who didn't step up to the plate. They were missing. I mean, I was amazed at one point that Morelos was on the park. Kent done nothing. Big players who are apparently game changers are not game changers, and he's got to get rid of them, and he's got to get them out, and he's got to try and get players in. When somebody mentioned to him, you're talking about maybe 12 players, I wouldn't discount that figure.
Yeah, but I think it's easier said than done in a lot of cases. You know, if you look at the wide areas, Sakala still got a contract, Scott Wright still got a contract.
Well, he's been told he can go, and so is John McLaughlin. Today, they've been told they can go.
Well, they've got 2-year contracts.
Well, they'll get. Well, listen. The point is this: somewhere along the line, when you've got that contract, they can say, you know, I think the goalkeeper's under contract till 2024, Wright's 2025. So those two can turn around and say, well, you need to give us money.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's that. You know, and okay, Morelos will leave. You've still got Colak. You might buy a number 1 striker. Okay, good. If McGregor stays, does McGregor get a new contract? Does he not? Does he leave? Then you buy a number 1 goalkeeper. Okay, fine. But there's still numbers of players in there. You know, Cantwell's still there. You know, you've still got midfield players. You've got Kamara. He's not playing. Does he try and move him on? You've got Lundstrom, Jack out of contract, Arfield out of contract. Do they leave? But even if you let the players that are out of contract leave, you've still got a reasonably sized squad. So I don't think the Rangers, if Rangers fans' expectations in there'll be 12 new players, it's not going to happen.
Well, let me.
And a reasonably sized squad, you know, whatever they've got left, clearly through the eyes of the Rangers fans isn't good enough.
Well,
and they're
that's
always
the
saying
point.
Glasgow that second is last. So they're no interested in the fact that, you know, well, it was only 1-0 there, and a lot of folk maybe even expected Celtic to score a couple more goals. The bottom line was that Celtic have won, and Rangers effectively have got friendlies to play. Now, they've got nothing to play for now the rest of the season.
If you look at the back, right, so you've got Rizvan and Barisic, 2 left backs.
Yeah, but look at the 11. Just we put together a graphic of the 11 players. I mean, McGregor going to go. Tavernier and Golson will stay. Davies, I sense a lot of unrest about him as a centre-half partner for Golson. Barisic, we think they'll try and offload him in the summer. Lundstrom, he could possibly stay. Raskin's definitely staying. Cantwell's definitely staying. We've already said, Tillman, would you pay $5 million? Ruffy says no, get him in loan. And Morelos and Kent are already, you know, they're going to be on their way.
It kind of filters in what I said a few minutes ago. The starting lineup's got 4 or 5 players in it that won't be there next year.
Yes.
So you think, is that a good way to approach a semi-final, a big game? You've got players that might not be there anymore.
Well, what else did you have as an option, though?
Well, not much. Yeah. But then it goes down to the fact that they've still got a big squad. So does he not think that Sakala or Matondo are better than Kent, who's not been playing well for months?
But if he leaves Kent and Morelos out in the semi-final, he gets slaughtered. He's
left Kent and Morelos out.
Why were they out?
Horrific.
Yeah, so no, but there's degrees of what we would call being in the mire, and the last thing you want to do is, when you're getting battered with a hammer, is give somebody a shovel as well. And I think it was the lesser of two evils here, Ruffy. I think he's got to look, as Neil says. Okay, that some players are going to be away, but they've got quality.
You would like to think if Colak, I mean, I don't know, Colak, I think you would like to think if Colak wasn't injured, Colak would be playing. I think he's already been on record to saying he's had enough or Morelos. So if Cholak was playing, he would be the number one striker. He would be playing. Everybody thought Sakala might have been playing up front himself for his pace and that, but I think you can have a go at him about Morelos because he hasn't kicked the ball, you know, and you're taking a chance. Kent, you always think he's going to do something. He's got a wee step over.
That's how I agree with Peter, because you know, you're right, Peter, if Kent and Morelos had been left out, hindsight as we know is a wonderful thing, but if Kent and Morelos had been left out of that team and it had been the same end result, there'd been a lot of folk, Rangers fans, there'd been folk in the media as well saying, oh, I know Kent's not been great, but it was only yesterday he was valued at whatever, 7 million, 14 million, whatever it is. Morelos, we know that, but he can be a big game player. He's shown what he can do in Europe, so you're right.
Yeah.
But, Beale would have been hiding it on, but when you look at that, whatever it is that Rangers have got left now, I know you get these debates from time to time. There was one recently about, you know, which Rangers players would get in the Celtic team and blah blah, and it seems it was only Tavernier maybe get even a mention. There is a gulf there. Of that there is no, I think there is now a gulf between Celtic. We know there's a gulf between Celtic, Rangers and all the others. That's clear, right? But if I was a Rangers fan, I'd be worried there now is a gulf, a growing gulf between both halves of the Glasgow Giants.
Well, if you look at it in a certain sense, so the graphic was up showing the players that are in contract are likely to stay. Now, if you accept that in the last 3 games, Rangers defensively have been exceptionally bad and giving goals away, they're all the ones that are staying.
Aye.
Tavernier, Goldson, Davies, you paid £4 million for him. You've got 2 left backs. You've got Suter sitting there on the bench. These players aren't going anywhere. That's your defence next year. So,
well, yesterday on this programme, Neil, I suggested that Rangers need a new spine. Some people just don't like that thought, but that is for me what Rangers need. Rangers' great sides of the past were built with a solid spine. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out a good team. It's good goalie, 2 good centre halves, midfield powerhouse, good striker, and then you put the gold dust around the sides. They haven't got that. And by the way, if they sign Tillman, if they signed Tillman or even got him on loan, Ruffy, and they kept Golson and Yilmaz comes in, do you think Celtic are going to be quaking in their boots at the thought of that as the...
Well, again, it kind of goes back to my argument of they've got a lot of players. It's not necessarily going to change. You know, if Rizvan Yilmaz plays or Tillman comes back, you're effectively using the same players. And as Tam said, there appears to be a difference in the teams. And one thing you've got to credit Celtic for again, I go back to it and you mention it, Joe Hart, good solid goalie, England international player, played at the highest level, great signing, 2 centre-halves, pride in defending. They've got an active midfield that are, you know, physical when they need to be, but really, really high energy and want the ball all the time. And I've got a fantastic striker. The spine for them is very good.
Yeah, the fallout from it is quite simply, you've got to, you know, he's got a major job on his hands. The other big thing here, Tam, is we always debate, you know, for any club, doesn't need to be Rangers or Celtic or whatever, every fan looks and says, okay, if there's a rebuild or if there's players going, like for example, let's just say Motherwell, Kevin Van Veen decided to cash in and go, it's how much money do you have in the kitty, and that's the thing about it. If this morning they're talking about this is the biggest rebuild that Michael Beale faces. Well, where's the money coming from?
Well, you're right, and if you use Motherwell as your example, now I do think Kevin Van Veen will go. I was hearing last week that he's given up his rental property in Uddingston. So, you know, if you're a Motherwell fan...
That's why I love you, by the way. Do you know there's that... I love that wee tittle-tattle. It's a wee wifey's thing.
No, well, that's apparently...
I love that.
Gospel. And I don't know the chance to talk to him about it until the Player of the Year night, but I think he is guaranteed to move on. And I'll tell you, I've heard whispers that Aberdeen are very interested in him, and he's obviously got the wee connection there with maybe Alan Burrows keeping an eye on him. I would like to think that Alan Burrows, as a Motherwell fan, will demand that Aberdeen pay £50 million for it. And then that would keep all parties happy. But no, I have heard that Aberdeen are meant to be keen. I just wonder if Rangers would be looking a gift horse in the mouth. As much as it would pain me for, and I've seen it before, mind you, you get used to it, but as much as it would pain me to see a popular ex-Motherwell player coming back and haunting us at Fir Park, you know, I've seen it most recently in maybe Scott McDonald, let's say, right? But I'm still charitable enough and human enough to want to see this guy do well in his career, because he's effectively kept Motherwell up this season. Don't forget that. If you look at his goals, and then you look at, you need to go way down the chart to see who else has scored for Motherwell this season. It's Kevin Van Veen's goals that have kept us up and out of bother. So good luck to the guy. I wish him well getting a move, and it will be his last, quotes, big move. But the bottom line is, it's in this platform in the Scottish Premiership where he is a goal scorer, and I think it would be folly for Aberdeen or Rangers or anybody else to overlook that fact.
Well, please forgive me for this, and this is where I'm obviously again kind of in this kind of a gobby mood, but I always look and week in, week out in press boxes going to football matches, and I look at the standard of football that we have, and below Celtic and Rangers, you know, Celtic, Rangers, and then below again, I think the standard has been pretty poor, and I don't think, I mean, he's banged in goals for them like Michael Higdon has done before. You know, when you get that guy who scores 25, 30 goals, I don't think Kevin Van Veen is at the standard that Rangers are looking for. They need somebody, they need players that can get them into the group stages of the Champions League. That's the first hurdle. For me, that's the biggest hurdle. The second one, which I think is make or break for Michael Beale, and I've been saying it for months, if he's out of touch with Celtic in September, October, he's bulleted, he's gone. He's gone as a Rangers man, he'll be sacked.
I think it's, you know, difficult to predict the future. In terms of Kevin Van Veen, is he 31? I can't imagine Rangers paying a lot of money for a 31-year-old, and Motherwell would demand as high a fee as possible. And I would imagine,
particularly when I'm going to a rival club, and he's got a year left in his deal.
Yeah.
So again, that's maybe stacked against that particular transfer.
But he's not the level they're looking at. I mean,
no, but I take your point. I mean, again, it goes back to things we talked about before, that Van Bronckhorst in his almost 12-month period delivered the Scottish Cup, Champions League group, and slipped behind Celtic after 2 or 3 poor results towards Christmas time. Quite conceivable. Rangers haven't won the Scottish Cup this year. Potentially they might not qualify for Champions League group. Under what circumstances is the manager under pressure then? Because one was fired for less than that.
Yeah.
What's the criteria for, or do you see Michael Beale developing a team, generating a team spirit, try to build something new? Do you give him more time? That's the question.
Don't have time.
You don't know time. Neil, since you've joined this programme, and I think it's you're a jinx. Managers are getting billeted after 7 games. You're talking about them going beyond October. If Rangers are not in touch with Celtic in October, they'll be calling for his head.
Yeah, see, the only thing I would say about Kevin Van Veen, no, I bet there'd been a lot of folk saying, Rangers need to do better when they bought Chris Boyd for Kilmarnock, and there seems to be parallels there, you know. Chris was banging them in for Kilmarnock, and yeah, maybe in the bigger stage there's all these stats, and certainly Celtic fans love reminding Chris Boyd, I think, when he wasn't maybe getting picked for the Champions League games, etc., you know, and he certainly wasn't scoring in those, but domestically, and that's maybe the platform that Rangers have to address first and foremost. They've got a guy there in Kevin Van Veen who knows his way about the penalty box at this level in the top flight in Scotland, and I think there have been stranger transfers than that in the past.
Listen, I absolutely am not going to dispute that fact with you. All I'm saying is that, in my view, it's just my view, Kevin Van Veen is not what Rangers are looking for. And I give you one thing that people might be turning around and saying, well, listen, we want to win the title back, right? But he's got to go and buy players, Ruffy, at a boardroom that's had 2 share issues in the last 6 months, okay? They've had a lot of people who've dipped into their pocket to give Rangers money, including the biggest one, the most important one has been the fans with their season ticket money, Ruffy, and they're going to do the same again. And with that money, the gamble, and this is where all the board will be sitting round saying, well, we don't budget for Champions League. You bet they want to be there, and you bet they're looking and saying, I hope we can get that Champions League money, because it is a shot in the arm and we need it. Not everybody has got millionaires who can keep bailing you out and keep investing and not asking for interest on the money, Ruffy. It's not just about Rangers. It's every other club who looks and says to themselves, if we are looking to rebuild this side, we need to look and say, what are we rebuilding for? To win the title off Celtic? That's going to take 12 good players. To get into the Champions League past the qualifiers, those 12 good players better actually be bedding in July to make sure they get there when the draw's made, August?
Yeah, well, that's why the Rangers supporters will be anxious about the first 2 or 3 signings that come in. You know, where are they coming from? How much are they costing? Because he's already went on record to say he wants players coming in that are going to be 3 and 4 years. He's fed up with this loan carry on. You come in for a year and you're away. So he's trying to identify players, you know, that are going to be there for 2 or 3 years. But I'm only going to be picking up the papers and I'm looking at them, identifying guys who are out of contract at certain clubs. You know, that doesn't fill me with a lot of enthusiasm, you know. And it looks, although he's saying I've got a massive budget, I think that budget will be on wages. Because if he's going to identify people for the Championship, they're going to be on good money. So I think it'll be the same as, don't spend a lot of money, ready money, get young players from the Championship, see if they can progress, get them on 2 or 3 year contracts, and then take a chance that they'll come through. But the other side of it is, Ange keeps saying, I'm going to bring in better quality. So everybody will be waiting to see, well, where's he going to delve into? What kind of cash are they going to be? Are they going to be identifying £4 million players, £5 million players, whereas Rangers are identifying guys that are out of contract?
Well, you don't know that for a fact. You've been saying that, you know, non-stop. The one great thing about the football is nobody at this moment, and I'm not going to go back to the 2012 situation of everybody who was an accountant's genius who said Rangers were going to go into administration and liquidation. There were some people with their finger on the pulse who knew what was going on in the background with Rangers financially in that situation. This time around, nobody is for a minute suggesting Rangers have got a lot of money. But they will have season ticket money. Now, whether there's enough in that kitty that they can siphon off to say, here's your budget. Now, I'm only going with what managers say. Sometimes they speak with a forked tongue. But Michael Beale says he's happy with the budget that he's been given to go and buy players. You can only take the manager at his word. If he's actually throwing a smokescreen up so that the Rangers fans all buy into the season ticket, well, who knows? But he's got a budget, and he's going to have to get the best out of it. He may well buy the odd 1 or 2 players that cost money, and he may well, as Ruffy says, duck and dive. If I was him, I'd go and buy, 6 half-decent Americans go on a tour of America, because, dare I say it, Celtic are on a tour of Japan shortly, and the money will roll in from that because they've got 4 or 5 Japanese players there, and suddenly you can see what their game is. 50 million in the bank right now. They're automatically into the group stages of the Champions League. They've won the league. They could win the treble. The merchandise will go through the roof. There'll be another strip undoubtedly rolling off the conveyor belt shortly. And they're off to a summer tour of Japan. Need I say more, Neil Murray?
Yeah, I think in Celtic's sense they are well prepared for the future, and they've got a settled team, and as Ruffy says, they'll look to add that bit of quality to it as well. From the Rangers' point of view, I'd still be amazed if he gets more than 5 or 6 players, because Morelos leaving will be replaced, Kent leaving will be replaced, Tillman, if he doesn't come back, will likely be replaced. Beyond that, a goalkeeper maybe, if McGregor doesn't stay, will be replaced. You're sitting at 4. We talked about they've got plenty of defenders, they've got quite a number of midfielders and wingers. If you're the board, you're looking at yourself, well, how many players do you need? And I take the point that maybe he believes that the squad that he's got, he could do with better players. But if you've got players under contract, you've got players under contract.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but if those players are under contract and you say to me there are only 5 or 6 coming in, I'm telling you they're not going to win that league. Not with that squad.
It depends. If you look at, 2 things. You say about the quality of the football of the other teams isn't maybe as good as it should be.
Yeah.
And that gives Rangers the opportunity to beat all of them. So really, you've got big games, Hearts away, Hibs away, Aberdeen away, Motherwell away. Celtic games. So they're the ones you need to take care of.
Answer your own question. Do you think with that squad now and just 5 or 6 players, they could win the title?
It depends who comes in. If you get a goalkeeper that's exceptionally good, if you've got a striker that's exceptionally good, if you've got a wide player with pace that can score goals,
and all 5 and 6 of those players come in with no injury problems.
Yeah, and you've got a chance in a certain sense, because Rangers' problems, okay, they've given away goals defensively, but Celtic have been far better in the forward area. And again at Hampden, plenty of the ball, good crossing positions, balls in the box, defenders mop up. Maybe a better winger, a better crosser, a better 10, a better creator, a better finisher, taller striker in the box for crosses. It might make a difference.
That's one hell of a roll of the dice you're selling us there, isn't it?
Well, it's what I think would happen at Rangers, because I don't think there's a bottomless pit to bring to.
No, neither do I. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what as well? I don't think it's even when Rangers have been playing Celtic that Rangers fans have had cause to worry, because right on paper that was a narrow victory for Celtic. It was a bit tasty at time, a bit meaty, the quality maybe wasn't there, but as one of my pals when I had a wee curry with him the other night, and he's absolutely Rangers died in the wool. As he said, it's other games. I mean, you only need to go back as recently as the Aberdeen game. I know the Liam Scales goal was a complete fluke, that. But as my mate said, he says he couldn't imagine Celtic going up there and coming away in similar circumstances, in the back of that. And then he pointed as well to the Partick Thistle game, whereas all that MD was talking about in the wake of that was the wee sportsmanship cameo thing involving Alan McGregor, etc. As my mate quite rightly said, he said that night, he says Celtic would have wiped the flare with Partick Thistle, and that's what he finds alarming. When you look at the bigger picture, you can't put everything into this one game and then think, right, Celtic were only, Celtic only won 1-0 and there wasn't that much in it, and if we'd have taken our chances and Sakala missing, go to look at the bigger picture and where they've been, and I think there is, to repeat myself, I think there now is a serious gulf between Celtic and Rangers.
The other thing I was going to say to you, Tam, is have you ever met a mediocre Celtic and Rangers fan?
What do you mean?
Well, because every time we talk about people that we know who are our mates, they're either dyed in the wool, die-hard Celtic fans, or die-hard Rangers fans. There's no guy who's he's a mediocre Rangers fan.
What I mean by this is, my pal I'm talking about, and I was at both primary and high school with him, what I mean by that is that he goes to all the games.
Yes.
So I take his opinion on board. He's not somebody that was born into a Celtic or Rangers family. He's not an armchair fan. This guy spends his dough home and away, so I take his opinion on board.
Another interesting question, how are Celtic going to improve themselves?
How are they going to improve themselves?
What are they going to bring? We're all talking about they've got a decent full-back in Johnson, they've got 2 decent centre-halves, they've got a midfield McGregor, Hatate and O'Reilly, and they've got a backup to that, they've got Jota, Maeda. What kind of player are you going to bring in to stroll into that team?
Well, I think let me throw 3 at you. If I was picking 3 additions to that squad right now, on the basis that Cameron Carter-Vickers is still fit, Starfelt doesn't leave, Kobayashi comes in, I think they might, if I was thinking 3 or 4, they might look at another centre half as cover, but winger, midfielder, centre forward.
Better than Hatate and McGregor?
Well, at Champions League level, it needs somebody, a winger, to go beyond a defender.
They're going to have to. They're going to have to bring in better for that level, because the bottom line was that last year it wasn't good enough. And they played in and get knocked out of 3 European competitions. Now, it's okay with Celtic's vast riches, and even their vast riches compared to their oldest rivals Rangers. It's okay them doing the celebrations and looking forward to a treble and all the rest of it. And they harm to Inverness, of course, but again, when they'd have to dip their toe back into the hot water of European football, that's where the complexion completely changes, and that's why, if you're real, it's easy to me be realistic about it, because I'm not a Celtic or Rangers fan, but 2 weeks ago when we were talking, Peter, that's how, if I was a Celtic fan, I'd say bring on the group of death to beat all groups of death for the Champions League, and let's just coin it and hope that we get money that helps kind of bolster our Europa League campaign, because that's the level.
Yeah, well, that's a boardroom attitude to it. I think, great. The manager's attitude is completely different. He wants a team that can get him out of that group stage. That's where he'll look and he'll say to himself, that increases his own credibility, but it gets Celtic to a point that some other managers, Neil Lennon I include, Gordon Strachan who managed it, Martin O'Neill didn't, but that's where he wants to be. That's his ambition on it.
You would agree that this present group aren't good enough for a European
the
group
evidence
stage?
is there, Ruffy. The evidence
They're
is
not
there.
good enough. They failed miserably. So what do you bring in to get them into that
he
group?
knows that. He's got that job
Well,
to
that's
do.
what I'm saying. All I'm saying is the Celtic, as the Rangers supporters will be anticipating what Rangers are going to be doing, Celtic supporters will be anticipating how we're going to get in that group stage. What's he going to...
No, they're automatically how they're going to get out of it.
Yeah. So what kind of player is going to get them out of it? Because the present squad are proved they're lightweight to get in there.
Well, I've given you the thing.
So I'm just saying it'll be interesting what Celtic are going to do as well as what Rangers are going to do.
One thing I would say though is you don't know. Celtic played in a group which was a difficult group.
Yeah.
Sometimes you learn by defeats.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
the team's grown over the last 30 games, 40 games. Maybe they become a bit more streetwise. Maybe they have become more difficult to beat, more resilient. Who knows? And the manager himself will know that internally if he thinks, the team's improved, it's progressed. Granted, you'll need a smattering of one or two better players, right enough. But Ruffy makes a good point. They're a good side, It's,
Neil, the only thing I can say that is beyond anybody contradicting me, whether it's on our feed or anywhere else, when you go to press conferences, listen to managers. When you speak to them privately, listen to managers and what they say. That Celtic side were not good enough to get out of that group. He wants to improve certain players. He's already gone on record as saying, I'm not interested in crowd favourites, fans' favourites. If they move on, they move on. He wants players that can get him to that next level. And I do not think, I once asked him at a press conference, do you have a bit of sympathy when a guy scores a hat-trick and he's not in the team the next week? And he went, no, I just put the team up, mate, he said, and that's it. And they can like it or lump it. That's his attitude. His attitude is, how can I get a team together that will take me and this side to where I want to go? And he has got no kind of I'm not saying he's without compassion, he's got a goal in his mind of how he's going to go about it, and that, if that's a fan's favourite, tough, because he needs a higher calibre of player.
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make. When is that player going to come in?
Well, would you want to give you a date?
No, to get them out. We've not heard any sound bites.
Well, he's already said. He's already said. What do you want to say? Do you want him to give you positions?
No, the point I'm making, Maeda's top class. Kyogo's top class, Jota's top class, Hatati's top class, McGregor's top class, the two centre halves, maybe the other fullback. So what kind of player is...
You're talking nonsense.
These guys are
top class.
Well, I know they're not top
class. You've just said they're top class.
They're top class in our league. They're head and shoulders above everybody's here.
We've only qualified for one major tournament for Scotland in about 13 years.
What's going to cost to bring in the player that gets them out of the group?
He's got a budget and he needs those three players. Whether he's able to get that level that can do it, but Maeda missed from 6 yards out against Real Madrid. I'm sorry, he knows you need to score goals. Maeda might run away from James Tavernier. He's not running away from somebody else in the Champions League group stages, Neil.
No. So the point I'm trying to make is, this present group, are you agreeing that this present group will not be good enough to get out of group stage?
Well, there's two imponderables there, right? One, I can tell you for a fact, he's looking for 2 or 3 players of a higher standard again. The second part is...
Where would you say that they're needed to get you at the group stage?
In Scotland, I don't know where he's looking, what he's got the agents doing.
No, I'm saying what positions in this present Celtic team would you say?
Yeah, either he's a winger, a number 10 and a striker. For me, that's what I would look for. I still think he's going to...
If you're talking about the Champions League, where does he need to improve? You can almost go through the entire team from back to front. Says if you've got any aspirations in the actual Champions League, then that team that you've got now, you need guys like them who are all a wee bit better.
It goes back to the situation that Celtic and Rangers have faced in the past where, okay, in my opinion, Moravcik was top class, great number 10.
Yeah.
And that's an example of where you can find a gem somewhere. But generally speaking, a Champions League player isn't coming to Rangers and Celtic because
No, you're right.
they don't want to play in Scotland, and maybe they can't pay exactly what they want. So you have to unearth, like Kyogo's been a revelation since he came to Scotland. So you need those type of players. That Celtic's a good move for them, Champions League's a good stage for them, and the money's acceptable. But it's a certain certain
and by the
bracket.
way, he needs to, with his scouting department, like John Park and the rest of the scouting team at Rangers, need to come up with a certain standard of player that's going to be acceptable. You know, and by the way, if you think Celtic and Rangers are in a difficult market to try and attract people, and they say, by the way, you might get European football, but you'll have to play at a few grounds where you can't believe it's a wet, September night. Think about the Motherwell manager. He's in a totally. He's literally saying to himself, "I'm going to Argos and hope I can afford a half decent Hoover."
I remember Jim McIntyre used to say when he was the Ross County manager, he would offer decent money. They would know exactly how much players were on in League One and League Two in England, but those players in League One and League Two wanted the Ross County premium. They're not going up there for the same money they're getting in League One and League Two, so you've got to pay more.
Oh, exactly.
It was tough. It's tough.
You know what? We from time to time in our show, we talk about that great 1983 Dundee United team, right?
Yeah.
And we say that they weren't particularly fancied. I'd love to know what the odds had been back then. We're going back 40 years now, of course, but they wouldn't have been particularly fancied, I'm sure, at the start of that season to necessarily win the league, right? Jim McLean was building the team, but famously, he was almost able to put the same team out week after week after week. Luckily, you could say, fortunately, it would appear that they avoided any certainly long-term injuries to key players. They may have been a wee bit fortunate when it came to suspensions as well. You could argue it was a different era and maybe the cards weren't flashed as freely.
It's a myth to say it was 12.
Oh, I know.
It's about 16 or 17 players.
15 maybe I would have said, right? But all I'm saying is, that for me is the only chance that Celtic would have of making a dent in the Champions League and getting through the group, is if the fact that Ange Postecoglou's had these guys another year under his belt since getting knocked out of 3 competitions. If he can fashion that same team, keep polishing and keep those guys together, then I think that is maybe their best chance, because Celtic are not going to be able to bring in players that would be a defining moment in a Champions League game. They can't do that. That's a way up there.
What he's hoping for is a recruitment plan. Now, you only have to look at, they're going to Japan. This is what Ange Postecoglou had to say over the last few hours ago on Japan. We're really looking forward to our summer tour to Japan. We're sure it'll be hugely successful for the club and the excellent preparation for next season. As we saw from our brilliant visit to Australia last year, the appetite for Celtic globally is huge, and it's right that we maximise these great opportunities and show the world all that is great about our club. We wanted to pay respect to Japanese football, so we're delighted to be engaging with the J-League and its clubs. Of course, they want to load the bases with money, Ruffy, to try and get at least a situation where they can continue to raid the Japanese market or unearth. There's suggestions that they're looking at, a player in Europe, in Turkey, I think it is, that might be somebody that everybody's chasing, that they might get first grab on by saying, as you mentioned there, here's European football for you. But nevertheless, it's a dilemma. His main dilemma right now is to try and win the treble against an Inverness side that really, I think, would have favoured playing Rangers rather than this current Celtic side. Incidentally, as we move on towards the weekend, Neil, I wonder, it's obviously the Saturday, I wonder what reaction do you think will be the Rangers fans going to the game against Aberdeen? That's Michael Beale's big dilemma. He said, I think Rangers fans will be disappointed as they voiced their displeasure to the squad at the end of the game, but will they come out in numbers?
I think they will, and I think, like always, they'd back the team. What I would suggest is if they don't start well, they'll have a short fuse. And, they won't cut the players a lot of slack if the performance isn't up to scratch. But I don't see there being an issue with people turning up and showing their support as such. But then the question, of course, is, if you are planning for the future to a certain degree, do you give other players an opportunity, younger players potentially, to get a game and play 90 minutes?
Would you do that?
I think in this circumstance, yes, because there's nobody chasing them for second place, is there really? So
yeah.
they can afford to, in a certain sense, give players an opportunity and see what they can do.
Yeah, an interesting one. It'd be interesting to see if he does that, by the way, because there's obviously suggestions of players who'll get a run out. Tam, at the weekend, some people obviously, I don't want to go down a particular road on this argument, but it's just something that came out in the news, and we always like to talk about certain news items. SPFL clubs will be allowed to make the decision themselves whether they're going to play the national anthem before the game in the King's honour, because it's obviously his coronation. So I think, you know, people have got their own, they can opt in or opt out on that.
You get fed up with it already, don't you? I just, you know, it takes me back to big Ray Jensen, who was a nice big guy who used to be the MC in the Fir Park Social Club, when you had the Camberry on Tuesday nights and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
And basically at the end of the night in the Fir Park Club, they always finish with a band playing God Save the Queen, as it would have been then. And what Ray would have said, he stood up at front, he says, right, band's going to do their final song, and then of course, as usual, after that we're going to have God Save the Queen. If anybody doesn't want to think me, now's the time to get into the pool room or the small lounge. And it was like that, and it never caused a bit of fuzz. And those who want to pay respect, those who didn't want to, don't. I just hate when stuff like this becomes far bigger than it should be, you know, in terms of an issue. You know, just get on with it, you know.
Is that pool room mobbed?
Bring the hood. Peter, I don't know, I was never in it. No, listen.
You're indicating that there could be trouble at a stadium.
It's all King Charlie's, and look at the royal family. Get any Tam Shepherds, get the big false, big giant ears. That's the way to pay tribute. And everybody put them on, you know, I don't know, pictures of Audrey Roberts for Coronation Street as a wee tribute to Camilla. Do something different, you know, but don't get yourself bogged down in all this. You know, life's too short.
I thought I'd mention it to you. Listen, a couple of things before we go, Robbie. Bobby Madden's going to retire at the end of the season.
Well, he's been one of our top referees for a wee while. You know, it's unfortunate because we've not got a lot of good ones. So the younger ones will have to step up, you know, and get more big games.
He went down south for a wee while there.
Yes, and I thought he was good. I thought he controlled most games. You know, he was quite definitive in any decisions he made. But I think he needed to get out of the limelight as well and get in there.
Yeah.
So be
interesting.
interesting.
In the pool room?
Do we know? Do we know who's got the final? Are we going to give the boy the final, the Scottish Cup final?
No, I think that's still to be announced. That's obviously.
Got to get the boy who stepped up for Willie getting that unfortunate.
Well, I have to say, I thought he did well. I thought Don Robertson did fine.
Yeah,
you know, just an unfortunate.
Know how Willie got
injury.
that? Picked up that injury? No,
I think he scalped his leg off the toilet. Just to get out of it. Who would be a referee in a Celtic Rangers match? You know what I mean? Honestly, you'd gleefully go into Ashton Lane and ask 5 guys to give you a kicking rather than go and referee that game, wouldn't you? Honestly, you wouldn't do it, would you? But could you imagine yourself refereeing a Celtic Rangers game?
Yeah. Especially you've got VAR to help you out.
Yeah.
So what's the issue?
What could go wrong? Probably look at you.
I mean, the odd day we come to from time to time talk about betting and gambling. We're sitting here, but you would have got a good, given that you can bet on absolutely everything, you'd get a good price about there not being a VAR decision in that Celtic Rangers game at the weekend. Because everybody was expecting me. I mean, the previous week in the radio we'd been talking about, right, what would be the ultimate, because it hasn't really been the nuclear explosion yet with VR. There's been some biggies, the Bernabeu back to the ball, Michael Smith, the Hearts that down, but there hasn't been a big game-changing, season-changing VR decision yet, and I thought it had been teed up for the Old Firm semi, but alas, they weren't troubled at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of quick things before we go. 24 years ago this very day, Neil, do you know what you were doing in 1999? Yeah.
So last time he was at the Barbers.
I'd have been in Germany at that point, I think.
Oh, Germany, yeah. It was Rangers beat Celtic 3-0 at Celtic Park. Neil McCann scored. It was the game of madness with Hugh Dallas.
Well, no, actually, I was at Dundee United at the end of that season.
Yeah.
And I left to Germany in '99 in the summer. I actually remember that because I think we watched it on TV.
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah.
That was the
mad game.
The guy coming down for the top tier
for a pie. Yep, it was.
Wow, 24 years ago. Enjoy your life, boys. Time flies by. You
We're
wouldn't have
trying not
thought
to do that. Midway through the season, Ruffy
4
thought he was
years.
going to die, and you're mentioning it again. Big Sam's coming back to the English game. It looks as if he's going to get the Leeds job. I think they're going to sack Javi Gracia. Yeah, honestly.
How many clubs has he been in that division?
Well, to be fair, I'm waiting on Leicester appointing Sir Alf Ramsey because it's mental,
It's
isn't
a
it?
bit late, is it no?
Eh?
Bringing him in, is it no?
Well, 4 games to go. You've got to try and do something, haven't you?
Hodgson's
that's
done
the
well.
talk. Hodgson's done fantastically well.
And the difference though, he was there before and probably knew most of the players. That's
Yeah, absolutely.
an easier transition.
Just shows you how desperate things come when it's 100 million at stake just for staying in the division.
Yeah, that's money. Money impacts
Yeah.
on people's decisions.
Absolutely. Listen, I've thoroughly enjoyed it today. Sorry we didn't get the quiz question, and I might as well fire it to you now. Just as a wee quickie, if you see if you can answer it. The quiz question. What was the quiz question? There's there. What was the first all-seater stadium in Scotland? Ruffy?
Oh, I've
You on this? Yeah. What about yourself?
some debate over the phrasing of all seater.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Go on.
St Mirren.
St Mirren.
if the answer's not Clydebank, then it's Pittodrie.
Kilbowie. Yeah. There's a bit of debate over
Kilbowie, old seater.
Benches.
Yeah. Benches. Yeah.
Capello's had benches for years and
But not
years.
all the way around.
All the way around.
But I think the answer is Aberdeen.
Yeah. Aberdeen had the stand.
And they were also the first to have the actual designed dugouts.
Yeah. So there you are. That was Patrick, incidentally, who came up with that question. Incidentally, I must give a special mention to Patrick and Cormac. Patrick, who's one of our reporters, he's 20 years of age and decided to get his mate, who also plays tennis at Strathclyde University, to take on the 2 sporting, ageing men here from PLZ Soccer.
Take you one.
Well, if you can't beat a 71-year-old and a guy like myself, I mean, come on.
Just remember the shock in their face when we won the first set 6-4. They were destroyed.
They were
Two young
absolutely
boys.
two
man.
young
So
boys.
it was
He just had
terrible.
experience.
Shocking.
She didn't need to do all the running about. It was all up there, aye.
Well, Ruffy does no running whatsoever. I run about behind him and he just covers everything at the net brilliantly. Rematch, Ruffy, yeah?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're going to give the young boys a rematch. There's nothing to beat experience. That's why you've got Tam Cowan on here today. First time you've actually been on without any emblem on your shirt. Do you know that? It's the first time ever.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's you must have been running.
slipping.
Must have been running out of promotional stuff.
On my t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Don't take it off, Tam.
Right, okay.
Thanks to Neil. It's been good having a chat with Neil Murray. He'll be back with us next week from Ruffy, from myself and Tam Cowan as well. Thank you to you for watching us. We'll see you tomorrow.